And guys, we all know the jig by now. Welcome along to the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. We're up to episode 9 with myself, Luke Simbox. As always, I'm joined by Jamie. Jamie, first and foremost, how are we, man? How we doing?
Good man, good. Can't complain. Been a good week. Worked hard. We've had some good boxing over the weekend. I'm sure we're gonna get into the nitty gritty, man. How's things with you?
Yeah, all good. Like you say, a good weekend of boxing that was started with you can't really have a good funeral, can you? But a fantastic send off for an unbelievable man in Ricky Hatton. I think we're both myself from Manchester, we're in and around the Manchester area, and I really do feel like the city done him proud. They give him a send off that was befitting of the man he was, the legend that he was, and many people packed out the cathedral. Many more people packed out the streets of Manchester and give Ricky Hatton, God rest his soul, the send off, as I say, he truly deserved.
Yeah, it was a cracking send off. Do you know what? There was something though. I saw Tyson Fury getting a little bit of stick for the suit he wore, but if you knew, obviously, you know Ricky Hatton and you know the relationship with Tyson Fury, there was a reason behind it that it was a typical thing that, like Hatton would have absolutely found that hilarious and probably mocked him for it. And well, that's the reason why it came. But no, it was great. The turnout was unbelievable, and you kind of thought that would be the case, and it's it's a true testament to the man and what he meant, not just to the city of Manchester, but to boxing and the UK public as a whole, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, Jamie. And as always, rest in peace to the legend, Ricky the Hitman Hatton. As the boxing world does, as the world does in general, it keeps turning. And we rolled into Saturday night, Dave Allen against the giant Arslenbek Makhmudov. And Jamie, I'm going to start off with we don't want to be after time as we sat here with Josh last week on the podcast and we was waxing lyrical about Dave Allen. We knew the dangers he was in, but creeping along through fight week, I'm not claiming after time here. We said on Friday on text, have we got this wrong here? There was something in the demeanor of Makhmudov and that Dave Allen when he hit the scales. He's never going to be body beautiful, but he wasn't as chiseled as we was led to believe through social media. He didn't look that guy, with all due respect to Dave Allen. And I started to think, let's take the rose tinted spectacles off. Like I love Dave Allen, he's a great guy, he's a great character. But have we all bought into the hype too much? Are we not looking at what's in front of him? That Aslanbek Makhmudov, whilst limited, has only ever been beat by world class operators. And we was telling ourselves all week that Dave Allen's not world class, but he's a dog. He's got the fight in him. That was never going to be enough against somebody as skilled and as experienced as Arslanbek Makhmudov. And that's how it played out in Sheffield in front of a raucous crowd, 8, 9, 10,000 Dave Allen supporters. Wasn't enough to get him over the line. He succumbed to a points defeat to Makhmudov. Jamie, at what point in the fight week, before I text you, after I text you, did you start thinking Makhmudov is the real deal here? Was it in the fight? Was it before the fight?
Definitely not before the fight. I, I still personally wouldn't say he was the real deal, but he boxed fantastic, and he raised his level when because he needed to on the back of the two losses that he has had. It kind of took away that whole demeanor about him, and and they probably thought they were getting him at a good point, confidence low and stuff like that. But he fought like a man that was full of confidence, that sort of knew he had the beating of Dave Allen early on. But I wouldn't say I still thought it was a real deal, but I knew as like we were getting like into round 3, going into round 4. I just felt like, even though I said Dave Allen should just stay off, I felt he walked forward and took too much punishment in the lead up to that, and I think that was his downfall ultimately, because he never changed it up, and it was a bit of a shame really, because with the rose tinted glasses on, we wanted Dave Allen to win. We probably thought it was better than what he is, because of the following, how good of a guy he is. I think maybe it clouded a bit of judgment, because I think we were all way off, weren't we, with the predictions?
Yeah, I think,
But yeah,
I'll add to that, when I say the real deal, I mean the real deal in terms of that fight. I don't want to start gassing Mahmoud up. I'm not that much of a fantastic guy, but I think one of the things that I found interesting is you could kind of write the game plan on the back of a beer mat, couldn't you, for what this fight needed to be for Dave Allen?
yeah,
And like you say, in the opening rounds, it nothing really, and Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis, extraordinary boxing guys. They've probably forgotten more than me and put together. But the plan didn't seem to be a plan. I think that's why I'm so lost for words. Are we
Yeah,
making Makhmudov work early so he tires late and then we take him out? Was we staying off him because he was going to come on strong later, but then Dave didn't come on strong later? Was this because of Makhmudov's work? Because he wasn't doing anything extraordinary. It was the 1-2 down the pipe, and he was
yeah,
bigger and
nothing.
stronger than Dave, and he made that count. But he wasn't doing, we weren't seeing him move around like Lomachenko, was we? He wasn't that kind of guy. He wasn't throwing these huge uppercuts like a Roy Jones. He was kind of doing the basics and doing the basics well. He wasn't extraordinarily good. So, was you surprised by Dave Allen's approach to the fight? I know you thought he might have stayed off him, but did he stay off him too much?
I, I, I was surprised because I didn't personally think that what like walking him down was. Look, I'm no expert compared to Jamie Moore and that. Like, I'm not going to say that, but I genuinely thought my game plan, the game plan that I thought would have been the thing, would be that I personally thought when I say stay off him, I will. My reason of staying off is Dave being on the back foot
Yep.
and making Makhmudov come to him and making him move more while you stay on the back foot. Moving your head more. That was the big disappointment. He didn't move his head at all. And yeah, he caught some shots on his gloves, but he's a big, powerful bloke, mate.
Yep.
And then 1-2s, and he was throwing them from range, and Dave was struggling with the range at times. But I don't know. I don't know what the game plan was because it looked like the idea was to tire Makhmudov out, but then he just kept coming on stronger and stronger. He did get tired a bit towards the end, but at that point, Dave Allen didn't have much to give because he took way too much punishment. And Jamie Moore actually said in the, did he? I mean, I said it more than once, but he was like, "You've got to move your head. It's no good keep catching these shots. Like, you've got to move your head." And he didn't do enough when he was able to get to Makhmudov. So I don't understand what the game plan was because what was it to take punches, like to show you were durable? All that show, like, don't get me wrong, he's an hard fella, in Dave Allen. He can take a punch, but that also shows that you're taking too many punches.
Yep.
And it looked like an easy night's work for Makhmudov. And well, it was an easy night's work. There was a
Well,
couple of moments, but it looked easy in the end.
Well, that's it. Round nine was by far and away Dave Allen's best round. But coming into rounds 7, 8, 9, and then the championship rounds, it must have been a terrifying proposition for Dave Allen to be thinking, this guy's not slowing down here. I'm slow. I'm depleting my energy levels much more than him. He's taking a lot of punishment, and it must have been one hell of a position to be in if you're Dave Allen and team Dave Allen. That this big rushing that you thought, you know what, if we keep him working, and you see at the end of the fight, Dave Allen leans over the top rope at the final bell. He's completely
Yeah,
shattered. But at the same time, we're also saying that during the fight, Dave Allen should have and could have done more when clearly he had nothing in the tank at that point. The fight had been beaten out of him. The long and short of it, with all due respect to Dave Allen, the fight had been beaten out of him. Do you think there was ever a point where, and I think Dave has alluded to it himself, Jamie wanted to pull him out after round 10, I think it is. Do you think there was ever a valid point, given the punishment that Dave's took, that he needed saving for himself, or was you okay with the fight going the full 12 rounds?
Uh, personally, I would have been. I was okay with the fight going the 12 rounds. But I wouldn't have had any issues with Jamie Moore pulling him out after the 10th. And I think it just alludes back to it. Just you didn't need to take the shots that you took. And I get it. You was trying to find your openings, and I get it. But just didn't move the head, and unfortunately, head movement is so key. It's all good and well being able to sit there and take the shots and move forward, but as we saw it, it massively impacted Dave Allen over the fight. And like you said, Makhmudov didn't tire, didn't slow down,
Yeah.
so it made it a terrible night's work for Dave, and I think it exposed more of the fact that Dave Allen is not the level that we thought he was probably at, and maybe he should just go and look to try and win a British title. But that might even be a bit of a tough stretch because we'll touch on it later. Obviously, we've got Jamie TKV and Fraser Clark, but we'll touch on that, what's happening with that later. Um, and if he fights Fraser Clark, it could be another fight like Makhmudov.
This Jamie, it segues perfectly into the point that I was going to bring up is with Dave Allen, we know he's extremely popular doing 8, 9, 10,000 tickets in the Sheffield Arena. But this is Dave Allen 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. We've been here before. We went down the route of him knocking out Nick Webb. He knocked out Lucas Brown. He took a shellacking against David Price when he was saying that he wasn't as focused, as fit, as dedicated to the sport as what he is now. That was back in what, 2019, I want to say 2018, 2019. Then we've seen him go back to the small shows. He's rediscovered himself, come back, had some good wins. The contentious loss to Johnny Fisher. The first time around, he put that right in the rematch. And then all of a sudden, we're chucking him in with the Sharks again. Because he's popular, does that mean that he has to take these hidings to nothing? We're saying that he dared to dream. He went in there with a fight he was scared of. He said that's what gets the juices flowing. But is that enough? Just being popular to get these big fights with these killers that Dave Allen should be going back and mixing it. I would like seeing him in with like a Webster or a Solomon Dakers and build into a British title challenge, which is no easy feat as you've said. But because of his popularity, we're now going to see him go in with a Derek Chisora, a Deontay Wilder. Before this fight, we was talking about Joseph Parker, and back in 2017-18, we were saying it was going to be Price, Povetkin, Joshua, and now we were saying it was going to be Makhmudov, Joshua, and whoever. It's dangerous, and it's a sport, it's a game. We're going to sound like hypocrites here because we was gassing this fight up beforehand. But is popularity enough to get someone signed up to these fights where they're massive, massive underdogs? And eventually that toughness has got to go. We've seen what happened with Joe Joyce. We thought he had a granite chin and that you could take a sledgehammer to that man. And, we see where he's up to now with these knockout defeats that he's suffered. I just think at what point do we start protecting Dave Allen from Dave Allen and from these promoters that are cashing in on his popularity?
That's the tough one in here because money's always going to talk. It's why we've got. I'm not going to say the word, but it's why we've got that show that happens that we don't talk about. The days who shall not be named. You've got the rising popularity of the Jake Paul situation, and that comes with popularity. Like Jake Paul would not be in a position where he is without being a name, and I think Dave Allen being as popular as it is puts him in good opposite opportunities for big fights for big money, but not obviously. But that's going to be at the detriment to his health because, as we've seen over the years, when he's gone in with the big boys and the top levels, and he's making that step up, he's been nowhere near winning any of the fights. Luis Ortiz, he were pummeled from pillar to post. That was a big, strong, heavy hitting Cuban southpaw. Then you had Dillian White as well. That's an hard fight. That was an hard night's work for him. He was young then as well.
I
In
was at that fight. I was actually at that fight in Leeds, and we was ringside, so we was very close to the ring. And the studs, heavyweight boxers are different. When you talk to people about boxing or our friends that aren't maybe into the sport as much as we are, and you try to describe the power that these guys carry, when you're up close and personal, you would have seen it in the gyms and whatnot, and at shows yourself. This power is different in it. When we're saying Dave Allen's took punishment for years and years, don't get me wrong, he's a good fighter. He's a solid operator. We're not talking about a walking punch bag, but we're saying that this is somebody that's not the fleetest of foot. He's not got the sharpest head movement, so he's going to take shots. These are bruises that'll die down in the days and weeks after a fight, but it's the damage that's going to pay dividends in 10, 15, 20 years where he might make all this money and he's not going to be around to spend it. That's the harsh reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, being up close and personal, for using that Dylan White fight as an example, he was taking punishment back then, and it only seemed to get worse. Like you say, the prize fight and whatever else. So yeah, he's been taking these shots for a minute now.
Yeah, and he's not getting any younger. And I think I'm a bit frustrated because obviously, yeah, we did gas up the fight, but I also said in the podcast before, I didn't even really want to see this fight. I thought he should have took the British title route because I didn't see where he went from winning this fight. Because he wouldn't have had an opportunity to go in for a world title. He would have had to fight somebody even better than Makhmudov to get a shot. So it just didn't make sense to me. And I feel like, yeah, his popularity gets him these big opportunities, but are they actually in the end? Is it good? Yeah, it's got a future for him and his kids and that, but the future might be bleak if, as we've seen from some fighters suffering damage later on in the life. Obviously, I don't want anything to happen to Dave Allen, don't want to put anything out there in the universe, but it's a reality that does happen in boxing, and sometimes fighters do need saving from themselves. And Dave Allen should be just on a course for fights that he can actually win. That he's not going to be in there taking punishment and not trying to reach levels that is unfortunately not destined to get to in the game.
Yeah, and I think let's get this clear as well. There's nothing wrong with going down to British title level. These
No, no,
fights.
not at all. Yeah, yeah. I want to say that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
absolutely. Like, we're both on the same page with that. There's nothing wrong with going to British. You look at somebody like Conor Benn, look at the fights he's in with Chris Eubank Jr. He's not won so much as an English or a British title. So let's not downplay a British title. Winning that is a hell of an achievement, and that's not no foregone conclusion for Dave. Let's touch on Arslenbek Makhmudov. I think I'm gonna retract a lot of what I said last week because I just had in my head that he was this big, tough meathead that could throw a big right hand. That if you got to his body, if you worked his body, you break him down. And maybe the elite operators will do that, but he will give a lot of fighters a lot of trouble with that power. And he's got a chin better than what people credit him for because when he has been beat by Caballel and by Vianello, who also had a great win this weekend. So that shows that was no flash in the pan. He had a grotesque eye injury against Vianello, and he was took apart by an elite operator in Ajit Caballel to the body. He's got one hell of a chin. You're not seeing him go down from shots to the chin very often. So I think he's better than I say better than what I thought. He's more accomplished than what I thought, more rounded than I thought. He's got a better engine than what I thought. So I can see him. He was calling out Anthony Joshua, and I think there needs to be a little bit of respect put on Anthony Joshua's name, but we won't go down that avenue because I'll get a lot of stick for that as a take on social media anyway. But Anthony Joshua is, he's a contender, isn't he? Anthony Joshua is Anthony Joshua, and if you're talking about beating Dave Allen on points and then calling out Anthony Joshua like it's a gimme, we're talking about one of the highest commercial generating fighters in the sport. But I think it's a credible opponent for Anthony Joshua in a rebuild. We're talking about Anthony Joshua that is not in contention for the world titles. He's a couple of fights away from being in contention for the world titles. He's Usyk with the fragmented belts, and when that comes around and all these mandatory challenges, which is a whole subject for a different podcast. But if we talk about Anthony Joshua taking fights to get ready for a super fight with Tyson Fury, because it still is a super fight, I'll absolutely take an Aslan Makhmudov Anthony Joshua fight in late January, early February next year.
Yeah, yeah. I would watch that fight. I would watch that because obviously, AJ's got to come in back and he's got to have a fight with somebody before jumping into a big fight with Fury. I still think they should just both go straight into a big fight. I don't like seeing warm-ups, but I'll take it. I'll take if they've both got to have a warm-up fight, I've got no issues with that. I think it would test Joshua a bit. I think, but I think he'll win that fight, give him some confidence. But yeah, it doesn't. It entices me a bit, and I think it's a good durable opponent if you're going to see where AJ's been out the ring for a year, and like you said, I think he kind of. I think. Do you know what? In fact, I think this is kind of how the boxing world is a bit like this, and boxing fans and casuals are kind of the same. When people lose in boxing, your opinion can quickly change. Like, and I think it's because he was this big, scary Russian who then got chopped down by Caballel, who at the time we didn't realise was as good as what he was. And then obviously with Vienna, obviously it was a bad eye injury, but he was losing that fight as well. And it kind of makes you step back and go, oh, do you know what? We're actually as good as you are. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bad chin, bad cardio, can't take a body shot. It's got no heart. But then you watch him again, and they've reinvented themselves. And I think maybe the problem with us as fans is we maybe need to not be so critical on the back of a couple of losses and think fighters that's it, done and dusted, washed, finished, never going to be able to. No, they're never going to make it because he proved on Saturday night that he had a heart because he got clocked a few times where it looked like whoa, he's shown that his gas tank, even though probably still not the best because he did tire going late into the fight, but it was better than I thought it was, and his ability to box was much better than I thought it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo those thoughts. And like we say, commiserations to Dave Allen in defeat. Congratulations to Arslenbek Makhmudov in victory. We look forward to what's next for both those guys. It promised to be an exciting undercard, and it did play out that way, Jamie. Bilal Fawaz got the win of his career. He drew the first time around with Janae Bostan. He went in there and he won another close competitive fight, a decision on the cards. The ring announcer, he butchered the way he ran out them scores, and we've got one of the viral moments of the year now with the world. But the way Bilal Fawaz kind of looking around like I've won. You know, like yeah, it was a bizarre way to read out the scores. But a real feel good moment for Bilal Fawaz. He's got a crazy backstory. He played the Bond villain as we shouted from the rooftops last week in the build up to the fight. But he went in there and he done a job on Janae Boston. I thought he won clearer than what the scorecards kind of insinuated. You know, he had Janae rocking in the third. He could have stopped him there. Janae came back really strong. And I think, you know, with the right application, the right dedication, there's a future in the sport for Janae Boston. But Bilal Fawaz at 37 years of age, he wins the English super welterweight title. And yeah, a real feel good moment for me, that. And another cracking fight between the two guys.
Do you know what? It was probably fight of the night. In all honesty, it was another absolute belter, and you're right. It was a clear win in my eyes for Bilal Fawaz. Clear, I think it was clearer than the first fight, and I had Fawaz winning the first fight as well. Um, and what a story! I think it is great with everything that he's been through, and I tell you what, for 37, he looks great as well. I didn't think he was 30. I forgot. Do you know when they do the stats and they show you all the? I was like, wow, he's 37. I didn't even realize he was 37. And that's another good feel story because he's not been in the boxing game long, you know. And he played the game well. He got stuck in the promotion. You know, he made all eyes on him, and he said he was going to go in there and he was going to win. And I think when it come down to it, he just wanted it more than Boston. And it's no discredit to Boston because I'm not saying Boston didn't want it. I'm just saying in that moment between them two guys, Bilal, everything he had been through and everything that was on the line for him, I feel like he just wanted it that little bit more. But Boston will come back from it. Um, I think he's got all the abilities to go far in the boxing game, but he's got to stick to boxing and he's got to leave his ego at the door.
Well, this is the thing, you know, and I'm glad you brought that up because I mentioned on the podcast last week, and it only seemed like a bit of a trivial thing to bring up. But when we're talking about a fight of fine margins, which this was, we're saying it was a clearer win for Bilal Fawaz, but the facts are on the judges' scorecards, the guys that matter, it was another razor close decision. And I brought up last week about watching that promo clip on Matchroom's YouTube channel, and it was Janae Boston arguing about being late at the gym. You know, whether that was a one-off, a complete, you know, red herring that never happened again, or that was a habit and that's why it was brought up by his trainer. You know, they're the 1% that these elite guys talk about that make the difference. And in a fight that was so razor close, you kind of look, you know, I'm not being an half timer because we mentioned it last week. You know, there was those little 1% that make the difference to a razor close decision on the cards.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Just lacking in any build up, whether it's, cheating on a bit of food, not taking nutrition seriously, arriving late to training, them small little margins, or dropping your run down by, you know what, I'm 500 yards from doing 3.5K. I'll stop now. Think little things like that. They are the big key things, and obviously we don't know what Boston was doing. We can't speculate whether or not that happened. Um, but he can come back and do better. But when it comes to boxing and it comes to being technical in that ring, Boston was getting the better of him. There was no argument in who's the better boxer out of Boston and Fawaz. There's no argument in that. And that's where Boston, I don't know, obviously his age, his ego, maybe because of how close the first fight was, and everyone's probably saying to him, oh, you can't stand and bang with Fawaz. You don't know whether that's got to him. He's gone, do you know what? He's dragging me into a fight again. I'm going to show him I can fight. And that can be your downfall. And I'm going to use Sugar Ray Leonard as an example here. Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran, the first fight. Duran baited his ego into fighting his fight. He bullied him and he called him the entire lead up. And he said to him, yeah, you might be able to outbox me, but you cannot stand and fight with me like a man in the middle of the ring. And he taunted him, saying, you would not stand in the middle of the ring with me, to the point where that's what Leonard did, and he lost the fight. And then when we went back and had the second fight, it was an easy. It was it was the famous no mass performance from Leonard, and that's what Boston has the ability to do against a fighter like Fawaz, but he just allowed Fawaz to get the ball to take the moment from him, and that's where experience comes in. His age. I don't know, obviously, maybe his mentality, because when it comes to speak to pure boxing, he was winning, but Fawaz made it a fight. And when it turned into a fight, it was Fawaz's all night long.
Absolutely, guys. This is what you're getting here on the Let's Talk Boxing podcast. We're talking about an English super welterweight title fight, and we're getting a reference of Sugar Ray Leonard against Roberto Duran. Real boxing talk. So I'm going to have to dig one out the archives for next week's episode and see if I can find a historic boxing quote to relate to next week's episode. So that's my homework for the week. Also on the card on Saturday, Jamie, we had Josh Padley against Reece Bellotti. It was a super featherweight clash. I thought for some reason during fight week that it was at lightweight, because I was talking about the winner going on to challenge for the British lightweight title. As it was at super feather, which probably favoured Reece Bellotti, who's campaigned down there more. Josh Padley, we've seen up at 135. Quite controversial on the card. I'm not sure if everyone's disagreeing with Josh Padley winning, but more so the wideness of the scorecards. I think that's what, there's so many times now that cards are being dished out and these judges are not being held accountable. Sometimes the referees are not being accountable for their decisions in the ring. I know they're not, savvy to the cards, but you get what I'm saying. Was you firstly in agreement that Josh Padley won the fight, or do you think Reece Bellotti nicked it? And talk to me about the scorecards.
I think Padley won. I had Padley winning. There was no doubt that he did win. But I do agree that they were quite wide. They were, well, not quite wide. They were very wide in Padley's favour. I thought the fight was closer on the cards than what it should have been. But I still think Padley won. And maybe, goes back. I think we've brought this up a few times on the podcast where, you can have a close 12-round fight, but ultimately you can win every round still, and it's still be a close fight. And I maybe take some of that into account, that maybe each round we're watching it and to the judges, Padley's just nicking every round, and maybe winning some rounds clear, because he did win some rounds clear, and there was a lot of very close rounds. And I think, yeah, there was no argument from my point anyway that Padley won. I do think, again, the scorecards were wide, but it could just be, again, if we go back and watch it, they probably have the right scorecards if you really broke down each round by round stats, punch landed, whatnot. But I think when people are watching it and and we think it's that close and they come out that wide, I think there has to be something where, give you reasoning behind, there's got to be some reasoning behind why you thought it was that wide, and the general consensus is that it was a lot closer than that. And and like you, I don't know I don't know why some people are arguing that Padley didn't win, but like you said, there's an argument out there from people that maybe Padley didn't win.
Yeah, it's a mad little fight, that one, because with Reece Bellotti, he was once, that guy, Bomber Bellotti, he was knocking people out left, right, and centre, and he come unstuck a couple of times, and he's 34 now. He's took this fight on the back of a fight with Ryan Piranha Garner. He was stopped in the 12th round of that, so I was a bit surprised that he took this fight, but obviously opportunity knocks. Whereas with Josh Padley, he beats Matt Chamberlain, who we was told is Turki Al-Sheikh's favourite fighter. This Matt Chamberlain, great guy. He was a plasterer from Portsmouth. He was getting all these opportunities on these Riyadh season cards. Josh Padley comes in as a 6, 7, 8-1 underdog, does the business against Matt Chamberlain. Then all of a sudden, Josh Padley's the next best thing. Then he jumps in last minute with Shakur Stevenson, gets outclassed, performs well, bravely, saved the fight on 4 or 5 days' notice. And then on the back of that, he's kind of in a weird position, isn't he? Because he's been in with the elite, one of the pound for pound best. And now we're kind of bringing him back down to British title level and trying to get him in the mix there, whereas his profile's maybe a little bit bigger than that. So it's kind of a difficult one with Josh Padley, where they're going to match him next. Is he going to be an opponent for another bigger name? Is he going to be built up domestically? It's a bit of a strange one.
It is a bit of a strange one because obviously, like you said, he's been in there with Shakur Stevenson now. We know that obviously he was outclassed, but it was also on short notice. Like, And he is a good operator. He's slick. He moves well. I like him. I rate him, and I think he could go on to challenge for world titles. But I don't think right now. I think he has to be. He brought along that way, and but then I don't know whether he's maybe sticking around at the British level could be his downfall. I don't know because I think he's in a bit of a. I don't know what's the word is, but he's been a bit of limbo, isn't he, when you think about it, because there's not a great amount that he can do on the British scene. He's probably going to be waiting around for opportunities to come on there, but then he's not quite ready to throw him back in with the big boys of the division. So I don't know where they go with him. Maybe get him on, maybe getting some European fights and slowly build him up to getting challenging world fighters across the pond and whatnot. Maybe I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, but I think if Turkey loves him, the Turkey's a big fan of him, so I think we'll probably see him getting more opportunities quicker than we probably think that he will.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to what's next. Let's flip it over to stateside Philadelphia. Jaron Boots Ennis. Did you stay up? Did you watch the fight the next day? He knocked out Usyk Lima in one round in his 154-pound debut after unifying titles down at 147. Did you watch the fight live? Did you watch it back?
I'll tell you what. After knocking him out in the first round, I'm glad that I fell asleep and got my beauty sleep in because that would have actually made. I would have been, and this is going to sound hypocritical because last week I said he had to go out and make a statement, but I just mean I would be fuming if I was there till 4 in the morning and then he banged him out in the first round because I'd be like, oh, great, I've stayed up and it's lasted not even 2 minutes. But at the same time, that is what I wanted from Ennis, and we touched on that last week. What he needed to do to put eyes on him, and I said when you're fighting this caliber of opponent, you have got to go out and make a statement. And boy, he made a statement. He absolutely put it to him, put it all over him, and bob, 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 bob. See you later. Good night. That's what I'm about, and that's the boots. And it's when you're fighting that caliber of opponent that we know you're better than. And obviously, I don't want to see people getting hurt, but you got to go and smash him. Go and punch his head in, mate. Get get a devastating knockout or a stoppage, a teacup. Get that ref jumping in, going, whoa, mate, you're beating this guy too much, man. This has got to stop. And he did that, and I think that's opened the doors. Well, it's definitely opened the doors at 154 for a Virgil Ortiz fight, but it's going to open the doors for eyes on that division again and eyes on Boots Ennis and going, all right, start taking notice, taking notice of him again. And then obviously build him up as the next Crawford. That seems to be the route that Eddie Hearn's taking it down. And you're watching him. He's not. I don't think he is on the same level. I think Crawford's just one of a kind. But I can see the similarities in the way that he can switch it and he moves. He's very agile. He's got a good boxing brain, and hopefully this is the platform for him now to go on and become a name. And I think because I think he's definitely going to go on to become a big star. Well, not a big star because we don't know it's a tough one, but I mean he can easily go on and unify the division and can make a great boxing legacy. That's what I'm more alluding to.
Yeah, I think he's got the skills that pay the bills, to use a much used boxing analogy. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Of course, Jaron Boots Ennis went in there on Saturday night and he done what he had to do with a fighter that wasn't on his level. He blitzed him out in a round. 35 and 0. He's been around since 2016. I think there's not a pound for pound star on his resume that he's beat. He's beat everyone that he should have beat. But you kind of look through his record and you left wanting a little bit. Just having a look here. He beat Chukadzian a couple of times. He beat David Avanesian. He beat Uza Lima in his debut. Thomas Dullaharm, Sergei Lipnets, Chris Van Heerden was a no contest. These some of these opponents are guys that are fighting your up and comers now, and I don't know whether I want to put this at the feet of Jaron Boots Ennis or his previous promoter, or maybe Eddie Hearn, that he should be doing a bit more. We'll talk about this guy as a welterweight contender that was around in the mix with Terence Crawford, with Errol Spence, with Sean Porter. Some really good welterweights. He was there during their, maybe the back end of the careers or before they moved up in weight. Virgil Ortiz is the fight that he needs to make. I think he needs another household name on his record where he's going into a fight with jeopardy. I don't think we could sit here between us, even with the help of BoxRec, and say, you know what, that fight there, I thought he was going to lose that. He's won every fight, and he should have won every fight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I get exactly. Yeah, 100%.
And
And
you've
you
got
are
Eddie,
right.
yeah, you've got Eddie Hearn jumping in the ring afterwards, screaming. He's supremely talented. He's supremely talented. Talent-wise, one of the pound for pound best. But in terms of all, when we talk about your pound for pound top stars, and you look at Inoue because of who he's beat, what he's accomplished. You look at Usyk because of who he's beat and what he's accomplished. Canelo Alvarez, Beterbiev, Bivol, all these pound for pound greats. Terence Crawford, and you think 35 fights, and this guy's not had a 50-50. And I love Boots Ennis. I think he's a great character, but the buck's got to stop somewhere, whether it's previous promoter, him, his team, or his current promoter, Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn come out and said that he's the best boxer he's ever promoted. He's got a guy called Bam Rodriguez on his stable currently. Never mind all the other guys that he's had fighting for him. Yeah, he's got Bam Rodriguez currently. So to come out and say Boots Ennis is the best boxer I've ever promoted, I think we're jumping the gun here a bit. Put him in with Virgil Ortiz, put him in with the other super welterweight world champions, and let's see how good he is. Let's talk about him in 4 or 5 fights when he's had 50-50 fights, 60-40 fights, and he's gone in there and he's done what he done to Usain Lima to these other pound for pound greats. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's his biggest problem is he's not had a bit of standout fight on his resume, and he needs more than anything a Virgil Ortiz, and that is the fight to make. They can't be. Look, Crawford went straight into the fight with Canelo. He jumped up 2 weight divisions, didn't dip his foot into the thing, went straight in there and got stuck in. You've got in now. You've made a statement. You've done what I wanted you to do and go out and knock out that opponent that was not on your level, put eyes back on you. But now, if you want to be a legacy fight, if you're fighting for legacy, you have to go out and fight Virgil Ortiz because that's probably like you said. Every fight he's had, you'd go, yeah, he's got to win. Virgil Ortiz is one where it's going to divide opinion.
Yep.
People are going to be like, do you know what? I think Virgil will do him.
But the thing is as well, talking about the Virgil Ortiz fight, if we're talking about moving up to 154 pounds and this guy is as talented and as great as we're led to believe, and we are seeing, maybe against subpar opposition, but we are seeing. Here's a fight and I should have chucked this out there last week. We're talking about the Virgil Ortiz fight. This will be no world. It doesn't need world titles. The world titles are tied up. This is maybe top 3, top 4 best fights that can be made in boxing. If you're coming up into the 154-pound division, you're looking to make a statement and you're looking to get the attention of Virgil Ortiz. Why not fight Israel Madrimov? He's with Matchroom. He'll take he's not a guy that's selling out thousands and thousands of tickets. A very good fight in his own right is Israel Madrimov. We've seen him go in with Crawford, take him a distance. We've seen him take Virgil Ortiz a distance. He lost both fights, but it was very, very competitive in both. Why not put Jaron Boots Ennis in with Israel Madrimov for his 154-pound division? Let him go in there. If he got a stoppage over Madrimov, we're talking about wow. And then he's screaming for Virgil Ortiz. If he beats him wider on the points than Crawford or Ortiz did, then we're shouting again. He's screaming for those names. Israel Madrimov is with Matchroom. Why not make that fight?
Yeah, yeah. Do you know, I didn't even think about that, but he made some very good points there, and you're right. Do you know what? That would have made more sense, 100% than Lima. That 100% would have made more sense, and like you said, that would have give us a better indication of where he's at as a world. I think he's a world class talent, but that would have gave us a better understanding of where he actually is. Because, like you said, had he gone out and knocked him out, we would all be going, "Wow, they could he's done a demolition job on him," or he absolutely beats him. There's not one round that he drops. You're thinking, "Wow, yeah, he is boxing wise the real deal." So I never even thought of that. I'm glad you brought it up because it's probably made me think. Then, like, yeah, that makes sense. But then, would that be a fight? Well, no, I've got to protect. It could be a tough fight for Ennis, and I've got to protect my prize asset now because Eddie's got to be careful. He needs Ennis and he needs Bam Rodriguez and he needs a big name to continue competing as a promoter.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's flip it from the bright lights of Philly in the United States. Let's go to this Friday. I love a bit of Friday boxing. I don't know what it is. It almost feels a little bit cheeky, a bit of live boxing to start off the weekend, especially with the Premier League returning this week, as well as non-league. We're big non-league football supporters, but that's a by the by. Friday night, York Hall, the somewhat spiritual home of British boxing. Still yet to get there as a boxing fan, but it's certainly on the bucket list. Everyone says you've got to go there and suffer the heat in a summer fight night. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole on my own there. George Liddard steps up to take on Kieron Conway for the Commonwealth and British middleweight uh, titles. Yep, and this is what we'd like to call a trade fight, isn't it? This isn't going to be one of those that is a Dave Allen where you're going to walk into your local pub, your local chippy, as we like to use for reference on this podcast, and say, "Oh, you're going to watch Conway Liddard." It's not that kind of fight, is it? It's the kind of fight that we'll be sat watching, and everyone else are going like, "Oh, who's that?" But they won't know that they're really, really good fighters. I'm looking forward to this one myself, Jamie. Really, really looking forward to it. And I think this is what we can consider a 50-50 fight.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I know the Liddard side are going to be like, no, no, we've got this. But it is a 50-50 fight. I think Kieran Conway is a great British level fighter. And probably European level as well. And I think he will ask questions of Liddard, which we want to see because he's up and coming himself. And it's good to have these Friday show cards. And like you said, a lot of the casuals are not going to know who these are. So pushing these Friday night cards where we're getting on up and comers and stars that are necessarily not massive to the casual side of the boxing supporters. Well, obviously, like we're going to sit and watch it because it's an intriguing fight. It's a 50-50. It's going to ask questions of both fighters, really. Can Conway go on to step up to the level, step up in level? Or is Liddard got to take him out? And are we going to see, right, phew, is he the real deal? So, yeah, there's a lot of questions to be asked. It's a big 50-50. And it's good to see a card where it's not the bigger names and it's trying to get the small up and coming fighters that bit of exposure. So I do like it. And yeah, I'm like cheeky little Friday, chippy Friday as well.
Chippy Friday. We can spread the word of Conway and Liddard whilst we're in the chippies getting our tea before going on to watch the boxing. We're gonna put some predictions out there for this fight. Is it going to be the experience, the know-how of the defending champion Kieron Conway, or is the prospect, the 12-0 George Liddard, is he going to come up here, rip up the script, and continue to forge his own path in this sport?
Oh, I'm gonna be that guy when I'm like, oh, do I sit on the fence? Do I sit on and I feel like I need to sit on the fence,
I feel
but I
like I could give
can't.
a truer prediction if you let me watch the first 3 rounds. I think after 3 rounds, I could guarantee you this is how this fight's going to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
We're not being nasty timers.
um, but I think if I'm gonna give a prediction. Think I think what's gonna happen is I think Liddard will take it down the stretch. I think it'll be. I think Conway will use his experience and make it a bit of a struggle for him. But I think with his team that's behind him, Liddard, and seeing him in his past fights, I think he's going to start. I think he'll unlock the puzzle that will be Conway in front of him, and he'll get through that experience that Conway has, and I think he'll win it down the stretch on points.
I'm going to play the opposite side. Again, 51-49, it is really that kind of fight. With George Liddard, I remember being really impressed when he beat Davy. That at the point that was two unbeaten prospects. They met and George Liddard was successful on that occasion. But I still think he's one or two fights away from, as you say, a great British level fighter in Kieran Conway. He's been there, done that. He's took his licks when he stepped up. He's never been stopped. So we know he's teak tough. And I think on this occasion, with all due respect to George Liddard, I think it's going to be a kind of 116, 112, 115, 113 kind of nitty gritty. If one round went the other way, this, that, and the other, in an era of controversial scorecards, we might see a couple of them. But I'm going to stick with the experience of Kieran Conway and see he gets it done on the cards.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, it'd be interesting that
Yeah,
to see
definitely.
how. Yeah,
Tune in
we're both
on
going to.
Tune in on DAZN on Friday night. Like we say, we'll see who's got the bragging rights on episode 10 of the Let's Talk Boxing podcast next week. We're going to try and make it into double figures, which will be a small milestone. Let's get into some other news. This is a segment I try and bring in on the podcast, and we never usually have the time at the end, but this week we've got the time. An interesting fight was ordered. We'll talk about it, but I'm not 100% certain it gets made. In fact, I'm not even 30% certain it gets made, but on paper, it was throughout there. The EBU have ordered the European super middleweight champion Callum Simpson to take on Hamzah Sheeraz. Now, Hamzah Sheeraz has been operating maybe above European level. He's won the European title down at lower weights. Callum Simpson, I think it's fair to say on the Let's Talk Boxing podcast, although he's never got back to my DMs about doing an interview, we do have a soft spot for him, given that we went up and watched him in Barnsley when he won the title in dramatic fashion. So, yeah, we've got a soft spot for Callum Simpson, but if this fight was to come off, Callum Simpson, Hamzah Sheeraz, this is boxing porn, isn't it? This is a great fight.
It is a good fight, but it's not happening. It's definitely 100% not happening. It makes me laugh. Like it must have been a slow news day in the boxing world. Well, no, actually, it is news because
Do you think it doesn't happen? Sorry to cut you off, mate, but just to expand on that, do you think it doesn't happen because Hamzah Sheeraz thinks he's above it, or because he sees Callum Simpson as a challenge he doesn't need to take at this point?
No, I think Hamza will take that fight, is hands down. But I think the team behind him, his management team, his promoters, are not gonna. To them. That's a backward step, and it's no disrespect to Callum Simpson. That's a backward step in the career that Hamza Shiraz is going in. He's just knocked out Belanga. His next fight really is for a world title, not to defend his European title. And Callum Simpson is not quite at that world title level yet. I think he probably needs a couple more European title defenses to get more experience. I just think it won't happen because I think the team behind Shiraz will just say, "Well, no, there is no benefit to fighting him. It's only really going to be lose in that situation for Hamza Shiraz. If he loses, that everything he's worked for has gone down the pan. But they might be wrong. They might say, "Oh, well, he needs a fight. Let's make the Callum Simpson fight." But I can't. But for the life of me, I can't see it. Just because I don't think the teams would. I think both teams, in fact, I don't think Callum Simpson's team would want to put him in with Shiraz when he's on the rise the way he is as well. Boxing politics.
Yeah, that's it. Boxing politics. That is a phrase we don't want to use too often, but we have to. Interesting. I was reading a Ring magazine interview with Frank Warren, and it was pretty much. I've heard the conversations and the hopes and the wishes and the plans and everything else that goes along with these Riyadh season cards, but it seemed pretty nailed on that if Canelo would come out of that Crawford fight, win, lose or draw, unscathed, that Hamzah Sheeraz was nailed on for February. I only read that today, and it turns out that Canelo was having surgery on his left elbow, so that February date's scratched now. But it seemed pretty set in stone that Hamzah Sheeraz was going to fight Canelo next. We know what Hamzah Sheeraz is, a Riyadh season ambassador. Canelo's got this agreement with Riyadh season for his next 3 or 4 fights, I think it is. When we're talking, with all due respect to Callum Simpson, I would say we love Callum Simpson, but if you've got a potential Canelo fight on the horizon, the profile of the fight, the financial rewards for the fight, everything that comes along with it, it's night and day, isn't it? So from that regard, the fight isn't happening. But if the Canelo fight isn't on the table, it might be more of a possibility. Who knows? I think if it wasn't for such an explosive win over Edgar Berlanga, who is on a world scene, a much more marketable opponent, if he didn't look so good in the way he knocked him out, then maybe again it would have been a more feasible fight. But I think they're on different paths, and I think Callum Simpson, again, with all due respect, is a couple of steps behind on that path. Another fight that was ordered that I think is much more realistic. We don't like interim, we don't like regular, but these are things that are floating around in the sport of boxing. We've got a WBA regular, we've got a WBA interim, and the regular champion, Kubrat Pulev, has been ordered to defend his title against Moses Itauma, the unbeaten, highly, highly touted. I don't even want to call him prospect anymore. He's a man, he's a fighter, he's not a kid, is he? Even though what is it, 20, 21? It's crazy to say. But yeah, Pulev, Itauma, is that a fight that we're looking at getting on next? Do you reckon that's more of a feasible option for
But
one of these mandatory shots called?
do you know what? I think it's yeah. I think that is one of them fights where at a time age. take that fight because that's going to put you technically a world champion. All by the regular, but you're technically going to be a WBA world champion. So take that fight, and I think he blasts Pulev out there. I think it's another easy night's work. I think 1 round, 2 round. I think he did. As experienced as Pulev is, he's getting on it. He looked awful against Char. Well, they both looked terrible, him and Char in that fight. Um, so for me, if I'm Frank Warren, I'm like, yeah, let's get this fight, boom, world title. You're then you're in the top seat. Then you can then dictate everything moving forward, and people are then chasing you as opposed to you having to go out and chase your opponents.
Well, that's an interesting point to bring up because it's been rumored, heavily rumored for a long time now, that Moser Town was headlining a show in Manchester, December 13th. That it was going to be a dual headline with Derek Chisora. We'll get onto that in a second. Um, I think from Frank Warren's point of view, he was saying that some of these guys, similar to how Anthony Joshua was in his early career, that the opponents now are realizing how dangerous Moser Tama is, and that one, you're going to get a hiding, and two, you're going to plummet. If you're one of these guys that are kind of highly ranked, you're going to go down the rankings. You're going to be seen as much as we love Moser Tama, he's still a kid to most people, although we don't believe that. But you know what I'm saying. So these guys are coming in asking to be paid over the odds. Like you say, you go in with a Kubrat Pulev, take a smaller piece of the pie now for the whole pie later on. In my eyes, Kubrat Pulev, although he's 44 years of age, only ever been stopped by Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko. There's a lot of marketability in this fight, if that makes sense. You're getting a trinket, you're getting a fringe, like world title, as we say, WBA regular title. You're beating a guy that's only been stopped in however many fights Kubrat Pulev has had. The two names being Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua. Imagine going into the next Moser Tama fight and you're saying in his last fight he beat a guy that was only knocked out by Joshua and Klitschko, and he done it in a round, which I do think he would. I think he'd do it in 1 or 2 rounds. Yeah, Pulev might want more money than you're willing to pay at the minute, and Moses might have to take less than what he's willing to take at the minute. But I think, in a landscape of where there's a lot of fights getting made, there's a lot of fighters not taking the fight Moses time. I think it's win-win. I think it's
Yeah,
borderline must take next. Who else are they going to fight? They turned down the Frank
I
Sanchez
agree.
fight. If they're turning down the Frank Sanchez fight, which was reported on social media, the IBF called that for a final eliminator. They turned that down. I don't know why they turned down the Frank Sanchez fight, because again, that is another top ranked opponent that would have put him in line for a world title shot. And I think that's another fight that Moses would have won. But
Yeah.
if you're not taking Frank Sanchez, you've definitely got to take Kubrat Pulev.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, do you know what's funny? My mates was saying to me, "Oh, have you heard that they've not took the Sanchez fight? Do you think they know something we don't have? Do you think they're a bit worried that they're throwing him in at the deep end too soon?" 'Cause and to be fair, it made me question it a bit because it was like, "Oh yeah, well, do you know what? The way he's just stopped Dillian White." Then Sanchez, I didn't see any. I know he's a Cuban, he's a Cuban talented boxer, but I think that's a fight that he could win quite easily. So to not take it doesn't make sense. But they've not took it. So then they've been ordered Pulev, take it. If they don't take it, maybe they've got other plans for him. But I have also heard that Hughie Fiore, there's a lot of rumours around him fighting, Moses Itama fighting Hughie Fiore
I
on
did
that
see that.
December card.
I did see that. And now this is the thing. Would Hughie Fury be a more competitive fight than Kubrat Pulev? Yes. Would he be more competitive than Frank Sanchez? Debatable. But other than the surname, with all due respect to Hughie at the minute, he's had his troubles with injuries and whatnot. He was fighting Povetkin, Pulev himself, and Parker years and years back, before Simbox even was created. I was going down to the weigh-ins and the press conferences as a fan to these fights or ahead of these fights. What aside from the Fury surname and the relationship between you and Fury and Tyson Fury is not there, but it's still the same surname. Is it just because of the surname that they'd make that fight? It's not, in terms of a career progression and a career planning. There's I don't know. For me, you're not taking a Hughie Fury fight over a regular WBA world title fight with Kubrat Pulev. Not for me.
Yeah, no, no, no. I agree. It to me. It makes sense to fight Pulev. Like I said, it puts him in such a better position fighting Pulev.
Yeah.
But then I can't knock him if he does fight Hughie Fury because, like we said, it's going to definitely be a bigger test than Pulev. But yeah, you're right. He has got the name. I'd be marketable. I think both fights will be just as marketable in terms of a commercial aspect
You know,
because
in an
they'll.
ideal world, I'd rather one. We're saying now Frank Sanchez has took the fight with Daniel Dubois. The heavyweight. It's even good that we're even debating the heavyweight landscape at the minute. That there's so many moving parts. But I'd love a world where Hughie Fury fought Kubrat Pulev and Itama fought Frank Sanchez, and then we made that fight. I want to see something from Hughie Fury. I think that's the point that I'm getting at. That
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, I agree.
I want to see something from Hughie first.
Because he's the thing is with Huey, like you said, then he's already been in with Povetkin, Parker, Pulev. Obviously he's lost to them, but it was only it was mad to think of him, what, 24 years old when he fought Parker. Might have been 23 years old. He's what? Is he 31 now? 30 years old. I think he's still young in terms of a heavyweight. But you are right because take them big fights out of it. He's not had a big fight since that, has he really? And he struggled. Yeah, you are right. He's been in and out of the game. So yeah, maybe, yeah, yeah. You know what? You're right. Yeah, I have to agree on that point. Maybe taking him and Pulev would have been a better. Pulev two would have been a better fight actually to see where Hughie Fury was at, and then make a decent British dust up after that. But I have no qualms with either way it goes because I just think whoever we put in front of Italmo, he's just going to knock him down.
That's it. I
Bosh.
think that, we've stretched out on this point a lot, but, it's well worth stretching out on. I think the worry is, from Queensbury's point of view, that if you put, and this is the only thing that I can think of, if you put most of the time in with a Frank Sanchez, or, guys of that ilk, like a Zhang Zhang maybe, or something like that, that once he's at that level, he can't come back down, can he? I think that's why they put the brakes on this wanting to be the youngest heavyweight world champion of all time. Once you get to that level, you're not going to go back with the belt. Maybe if you take a loss, you're going to rebuild, but you're not going to fight a Frank Sanchez and then come back and fight somebody that we don't really know. So I think that's why maybe there's a hesitancy there, and I can understand that. But yeah, we wait to see what's next for Moses Atama. Another heavyweight just to close it out. Talk about heavyweight boxing. It's looking like Jamie TKV and Fraser Clark that was going to be the boxer launch show on the BBC for the British heavyweight title. Again, these fighters can all move around and fight each other, but it's looking like Jamie TKV, although we've not got any official word of an injury from Boxer or from Jamie. It's all over social media that he's injured his ribs, and they're either looking at postponing that show to the 29th of November, which will clash with a Matchroom show and the debut of Ben Whitaker, their new signing, or they're going to get in a late replacement for TKV to fight Fraser Clark for the British title. So we wait to see what goes on there. December 13th, we were saying before, most of the time, we're headlining. We don't know against who yet. Derek Chisora should be on that card. If he's not, this fight, number 50, he put on social media the other day. Did he want him to fight? Was it Wilder, White? Can't remember the third name, but there was three names. He said he'd jump to fight next. Like, Derek Chisora, fight number 50. We thought the last one was the last one. This looks like it's going to be the last one. Who we think is going to go in next with Del Boy?
Right, just off topic, right? And this is to you, Del Boy, right? Because it wasn't your last fight. If you do end up at Manchester card, yeah, I want a free ticket because I got me and my pals tickets for that because we thought it was your last fight. Not that I will going to come and watch you anyway, but the whole point was it was your last fight. I was buzzing with excited, and then you're back again. I want a free ticket, Derek. Right now, I've got that off my chest. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with Derek. I don't. It's how he's meant to be on this Manchester card. It's meant to be the last fight. But I don't know because there's not been much rumours about who is like whether or not he's up. In fact, funnily enough, even a town we've been told December the 13th in Manchester for both of them, but there's not been anything official anywhere on both fighters and Chisora more than Italmo. I've barely seen anything about Chisora. All I've seen is the fact that them two are going to be headlining this show in Manchester, and it was going to be finally going to be Derek's last fight. But yeah, there's still no rumor on. There's no rumor, but no official announcement on what's happening. And for the life of me, I actually don't know who Derek's gonna be fighting. And I tell you what, I think him and Wilder, his last fight would be. I think that would be the big marketable one.
So, this is not uncommon news in terms of the wider boxing public, but the opponent should be Zhilei Zhang. I love the Wilder fight for Chisora. I think at this stage of his career, Wilder's a less dangerous fight than Zhilei Zhang. But Terry Lane, Zhilei Zhang's manager, I speak with him quite well. He's going to come on for an interview at some point. And I messaged him and I said, December 13th, Manchester, can we get, a bit of a Zoom interview going to build up the fight? And he texted me back and he said, we've signed our part. It's back with them. So that fight should be on. Frank Warren then in an interview today says, we're waiting on a contract back. So there's a bit of a miscommunication there. But from both sides, it seems to be Derek Shaw and Zhilei Zhang is the fight that they want for December 13th. And the more it pushes on and pushes on, we then have Deontay Wilder saying, I'm back in January. So then does that mean Derek Shaw's head's going to be turned? He won't be on that 13th of December card in Manchester, that he'll look then to fight Wilder in January. So it's still spinning plates. We're talking about this on the podcast here as one of our closing subjects. But imagine being one of these promoters trying to get these fights made. There's a lot of ego, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of pride at stake, isn't there? But for me, I think it's going to be Zhilei Zhang and Terry Lane. Interestingly, his dad, the late great Mills Lane, world famous boxing referee from the 70s, 80s, 90s, heavyweight world title fights galore. He refereed and he was in the middle of Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield as well with the whole ear biting thing. So that'd be a really interesting interview to get on. So shout out to Terry Lane for when he does eventually come on to Simbox. Jamie, it's been another great podcast, episode 9 now. We're back on a roll, really enjoying it. Anything you'd like to add before we close out, brother?
No, mate. Another good episode. Getting in double digits, baby. We come back for the next one. You know, no, it's good. It's exciting. The channel's growing. We're gonna keep churning these out, and it's definitely gonna be over the come right up to Christmas anyway, and going into the new year. We're gonna have so much content. There's gonna be so much to talk about. Fight sign, big fights coming up. Yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're getting the juices flowing already. But like you say, it's a big run up to Christmas, guys. I really appreciate everybody that checks out our content. Make sure you have a look on the Simbox YouTube channel. We've got interviews up there recently with Stephen Nunes Jr. I've got one coming with Brian Phillips. We've got one with Troy Williamson. There's a lot of content on there. There's a lot more to come. As Jamie says, we're going to work on some new ideas ahead of some of the bigger fights at the end of the year, mainly Eubank Ben 2. So keep an eye out for that. Please hit that like button, the subscribe button, give us a share, give us a follow. It all helps. I've been Luke Simbox. He's been Jamie Ryan, and I'll catch you on next week's episode.